So now we'd like to jump in and talk about how you can make a Wonder Deck and come in and do a short interactive activity. I know that some of you all have been challenged and been given the role of creating online learning where you have a certain amount of time that you can spend in online learning with your students. And that may be limited, and we understand that that may be the case. So now we want to take you forward and give you something that you can do in a 30-minute bracket where kids can really work through the inquiry cycle and talk about it together in class or in an asynchronous fashion or synchronously using Zoom or Google Meet or any of the other tools. So let's go through and look at it. To start really quickly, we want to show you a little bit about what this looks like. And all of these resources that we're giving you, you can make a copy of. And we've tried in our examples to give you multiple types of slides, and we're going to show you where to find more of those. So if you're a little uncomfortable making that slide yourself, this will give you an opportunity to, frankly, rip one off from Pear Deck, take what we've done and rework it to make a slide deck, and a wonderful one for use in the classroom. So you can see that we've got some samples here, Civil War recordings, analysis piece using the Library of Congress analysis tool. Laura thought it would be great to bring Commander Perry into this conversation since we've got Commander with us. And then we also went in to talk about some analysis with the Devil's Den, and then we brought in a science piece as well. And so in clicking this and choosing one of these slides, it will take you out to an automatic copy document. For our purposes right now, I'm going to step out of that because what I want to do is just go and show you the document a little bit and talk to you about the why. And so when you copy that document, it's going to come into a document that looks like this, that has somewhere in the neighborhood of really 7 to 8 slides. The core content of those slides will be 5 or 6 of them. And we will come back to this, but you can see over here on your dashboard, you have an intro slide, which we're not counting as one of the slides in the slide deck. And then you have some other process slides that are here. And that's what I want to go back and talk about right now, because I think it's really important that we're very thoughtful in the way that we present and the way that we work with students around questioning and inquiry. So we're going to go on into that. So I want to go to this next, I want to go into this next piece. And so we're going to talk about actually making a Pear Deck and primary sources. Now, a lot of times when people think of primary sources, they immediately think of social studies, or they think of language arts with a piece of text. But understand that primary sources really can be a set of data. It can be something that's scientific. It can be an artifact, lots of different things. So we really went back to kind of create a Wonder Deck, and that's our term. It comes from that weekly Wonder piece, but we said we want a deck of slides that are around inquiry best practices. And this really would be 5 to 6 slides, not counting that intro slide. It takes a student from wondering to research and on to reflection. And it's going to be compact, yet it's flexible. So it's going to allow you some movement, some flexibility in that asynchronous piece as well as the sync piece. And either of them work. And that's what's the beauty of Pear Deck right now and the beauty of a short deck. You can use this at the beginning of a week, in the middle of a lesson, or maybe as an assessment at the end. Now we're basing this on some real constructive research that has been done around the Stripling model of inquiry. This is a model of inquiry. There's multiple models of inquiry. We know there are many out there. This is one that we've engaged with the Library of Congress that really has students connect with something, wonder about it, investigate it, construct their knowledge and thinking, and then go to express it and reflect on it again. Although we know that the reflection process really is throughout the cycle of inquiry. It's not just at the beginning or the end. And I want to stress that because as you build slide decks, you can actually move through each of those slides and use reflection pieces. Pear Deck helps you with that. And we're going to show you how to make that happen. So we built our Wonder Deck around this cycle of inquiry. And I'd like to walk you through that really quickly. And then we'll go back in and look at some samples closer to just give you some examples. So when we thought about a slide deck, we really thought, how do we process that with the Perry? with the Perry ideas and bringing Perry to the classroom. And that very first slide, we want students to connect with it. And Pear Deck is really great because they've got some intro slides. It could be a social emotional learning one. It could be a questioning one. It could be like this one that's here, a mind map, something that the students are doing. They think about, it activates a prior lesson, or maybe it activates background knowledge or connects to something they've learned before. And that's really what we're going to start on that very first slide after our title slide. Then we're going to jump into some analysis, because this is where we want to move students along the continuum of thinking. We know that once you start to analyze and then apply something, the student's memory and ours, if we're both working in the inquiry process, which is dual inquiry, is going to move from a situation of short-term learning to long-term learning. And so that's what we want them to do around analyzing and wonder. They're going to analyze a source. And this actually falls into the very first part of the Library of Congress analysis tool. And if you're familiar also with the National Archives analysis tool, you'll know that the first part of their analysis also fits here too. The students can look for things collectively or individually, and they can deconstruct a primary source, whether that is a textual piece, an audio piece, whether it is visual, or an artifact, any of those. We know there's a wide variety of primary sources, and they can all be used in this. So the reason it says slides 2 to 3, because sometimes as a teacher, you may want them to do some comparison and contrast. You may want them to do a Venn diagram, have a comparison about before and after. And that's why we kind of say, you know, it can be either of those. It can be slide 2 or 3. Let's go on to the next one though. So if we go in, then we're going to go into investigation. After we do that analysis piece on those slides, we're going to go to investigating something and constructing our knowledge. You can do this a lot of different ways. You can use more primary sources that give more information. You can go to the BIB information, which is rich and diverse within the Library of Congress. Understand there's some gaps there. Some of the earlier pieces that were in the Library of Congress may not have as much information. They try to collect more now. You can find a secondary source, or maybe a scholarly piece of research that students can go to. And then you're going to ask students to really start constructing what they are thinking about and bringing their knowledge together in synthesis. After they do that, we're going to ask them to express it and to reflect on it. They're going to share what they do. And this is a rock star piece with Pear Deck. They're going to share their learning. They're going to reflect on it individually, depending on if you're doing this in a synchronous fashion or an async fashion. You can share that learning on the spot, or maybe, like Laura showed, you can pull the dashboard information later, post that slide midweek, and have students do a secondary activity as they proceed through the week. The other part that I like about this is thinking about the next step and asking students to think about, what's the next question? What do we want to find more information about? And how do we do a reflective process and then ask, what don't we know? What are the gaps and where are we going to go with that? So where do you find the resources? Perry's going to show you that. Let's go ahead and click right here. And I want to take you out for a second. It's going to take a moment to load, but this is a really wonderful piece. Pear Deck has got this built for you. They've already started to think about it. On the Pear Deck link that is linked to the presentation, you'll see, and it's going to take a bit to load, that there are slide decks that are for a beginning of class, for building a community. There's your SEL piece that's so important right now, that you can check in on a student purely individually on your dashboard and see how they're doing. You can celebrate with your students. You can really think about critical ideas, having students look at what they're doing and learning and bringing that in. And then there's some discussing hard topics, and look at this Pear Deck lesson slides for during your lesson and also at the end of your lesson. Beyond that, there's also some example questions. It's endless. When you click on this, it brings you up to a Pear Deck page. And let me go back right here. And it will bring you, this happens to be another piece that is a prompt piece, but it'll bring you to slides that look like this. You can download the slide and use it in your slideshow. So for example, I'm going to go right here. I happen to download the end of lesson slides. Now this is an automatic copy, just like Laura and I in ours. It's a forced copy, so it'll make that into your drive. And you can see here on the left that it's going to give you an entire selection of slides that you can use. This is just a starting place. But if you click on some of those slides, it's going to give you some ideas. What I love about this though, is you can go into these slides and you can edit them. You can change the questions. So if you want to use something else on a grid, you can do that. If you want to go here and change what this prompt is, you can use the images and the interactivity of it already, and you can go in and change your prompt. So these are end of lesson slides. I'd like to show you this deck. This is the critical thinking slides. This really applies to the inquiry processes we were just talking about. And if you look up at the top, you'll see some things that are familiar. You can connect concepts. You can have students think about points of view and perspective, which is really neat. You can have a wonder question or a how might we question. How would we together find an answer? Where would we look for our next steps? How would we solve this equation? How would we create a hypothesis and test it? In a situation where we're looking at labs, this is a way where students can brainstorm about how they could test a hypothesis and look for data. And so you might think of using some of these slides as a base point. So now I want to go back really quickly and share one of our presentations, and I'm going to go through that. We've got a couple of them, and I'm going to start with the first one here because it's a little different, and it's connected to a presentation that is online. It's a video. So many of you have a public broadcasting service that's in your local community. For us, it's Rocky Mountain Public Media, and they create some Colorado history pieces. And we decided to use a portion of one of their slides to talk about a STEM concept that is in our next generation standards for our students. And so we did that, and we started looking at the impact on forests. So here's our intro slide. We're going to go to the next. I hope this looks a little familiar to you because this is one of the slides that was on the intro slides. And we went in and changed and put a mining impact on a forest right here. Then we went to analysis. Here's our primary source. We asked some key questions here, asked for students to think about it and analyze it. These are leading questions, and this is an interactive slide. So students can go into the interactive slide and take a look at it. And that bar is right at the bottom so they can answer. The next one, here's a changing forest piece. Here's our video clip. Now, we can clip the video, and you do have that option to go in and edit a section in many of them, but we elected not to. And one of the reasons we did that is because we wanted students to be able to experience the content that was before and after the focal point for us, because it gives a wider background information, it gives more context, and in addition, it may spark some interest and give students something productive to think about during this time, and it actually applies to their learning. That goes with another document-based question that's available from Rocky Mountain PBS online. So you can see, we asked how mining has changed the landscape. We asked the students to watch the video between these timestamps by just clicking on the video. And then what did they learn? And again, it's an interactive slide, so they can get into this, watch, interact it, and response back. And so you can see their responses. Then we did a 3-2-1 reflection on it. And then here's that next step. Where can I find more information? What other resources would you look for to find more information on your topic? I don't know about y'all, but for my students at the middle school level, and even those that I work with at the high school level, a lot of times they get stumped and they can't think about the next steps for research. An interactive slide like this asks them to reflect on what they've learned and what they've done, but then to think about the next steps, to continue to think about that research mindset that we want when they're working in an inquiry process.
Yeah, so if I wanted to start this out And here's my presentation. I'm going to go to Start Lesson. And then this is my choice. So this time let's choose student paced, okay? So if I choose student paced, so if you downloaded one of those Perry and primary sources that Michelle was just going through, you would open it up with your add-on like this. And then you have, I like this. So we showed you how to give them the code, but you can also just give them this link and throw that in an email, in your Google Classroom, in your Schoology assignment, however you're working with kids, and then they can go straight into this student paced. This one will go straight to Google Classroom if that's what you're working with. And then once you're in, then you can go down here and it says like turn off student paced. So I can change that, or I can leave it in student paced. So when I'm sharing that link with students, I leave it in student paced, and I can leave that in student paced up to 30 days. And so students can have as long as they need to go through that lesson. Then I can go back in and I'll be able to check the answers and work with the kids. And then also I can go right back here, go to review the lessons, and go see those answers anytime I need to.